Again, we thank you for coming. And now we're going to move into a series of questions that deal with domestic issues, and then we will blend from there into issues that are specific to Garrett County. I think many of you in the audience have taken the opportunity to write a question on a card, and we've handed those in to our secretary, Bill Schreider, who at the end of the regular questioning will start bringing those up. So, right now, I'm going to call our Vice Chair, Ruth Humble, back to the podium to continuing the questions on domestic issues.
Thank you. Mr. Ficker, would you close down Planned Parenthood?
I wouldn't vote for any funds for Planned Parenthood because they're pro-abortion. They're like the National Women's Political Caucus that Ami Hober used to work for. I would not vote for funds for abortion. And I've always been endorsed. Tom Sheehan can tell you this because he was very active in Maryland pro-life. I've always been endorsed by pro-life. So I think that we need to support the sanctity of life, especially when you consider the alternative. And I've always voted that way and always will. I'm a sure vote for pro-life. You can count on Robin Ficker being pro-life.
Thank you. And Ami, you can respond. He did attack you.
Yes, yes indeed. Microphone, Terry. I never worked for the National Women's Political Caucus. I was one of the early members many years ago. Let me read you their charter. It says specifically to increase the number of women in all aspects of political life, as elected and appointed officials, as judges in state and federal courts, and as delegates to national conventions. The organization recognizes equality for American women is not for the asking, but for the winning. Is there anyone in this room that would disagree with that objective? I stand by my membership there. I stand by the work I did.
Yeah, I would disagree because the National Women's Political Caucus has never endorsed anyone who supports anything but abortion. If you're pro-life, they will never endorse you.
Not true.
Okay, let's move on because the next question is also about the same subject. In fact, the next two questions are about the same subject. So I'm going to, Mr. Howard. We slaughter 4,000 babies a day. Is there another way to help these females and encourage them how to handle their pregnancies?
I believe there are many ways. Most of you in this room have heard my backstory, and so I won't belabor the point. I was adopted and raised in this country, and I believe I've been an embodiment of living the American dream. So you can imagine I have some rather strongly held views on abortion. There are over 9,000 what are called federally qualified health centers, FQHCs, in this country, over 9,000 of them. There are, in addition to those FQHCs, there are over 2,000 pregnancy centers. That's over 11,000, Ruth. Actually, it's closer to 12,000. It does not include Planned Parenthood. The government sends over $500 million a year to Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood is one of the largest supporters and carrying out operations of abortions in this country. And so I would say that taking the money away from Planned Parenthood, and people scream, oh, you're anti-woman. Not at all. And taking that $500 million plus and sending it to other FQHCs, given what they do, they are not attached at the hip to abortion. They have adoption counseling, they have women's health services that spans the spectrum, and a lot of it has to do with adoption referrals. And I believe that there are ways to do that and decouple that federal money from abortion and put it over toward adoption and other services.
Thank you. Terry Baker. Justice Scalia recently died. He continually opposed Roe versus Wade that became law in 1973. He wrote dissenting opinions against Planned Parenthood in 2 cases, Southeastern versus Casey in 1992 and Stenberg versus Cahart in 2000. Based on your recent publicity, regarding Planned Parenthood selling body parts, what is your firm position?
Well, my firm position is I am pro-life, and I just can't even begin to comprehend the selling of a baby part. Research has proven when they do the late-term abortions, they inject the needle, the fetus actually twinges. And if you can't look at that and touch your heart and know that everything about Planned Parenthood on abortions, the funding for Planned Parenthood, all of that, you know, I just can't begin to comprehend how you could not support or be a pro-life person. So I am very pro-life and always have been and always will be. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Vogt, Delegate Vogt. If President Obama nominates a liberal judge as Scalia's replacement, do you think the Senate should delay the appointment so that the next president could appoint?
I absolutely think they should block any nomination that comes from President Obama. It's been done in the past, and they're trying to use that against our Republican Senate is absolutely aberrant, and they should hold strong and make sure that we get a fair shot at a good justice.
Thank you. Chris, Carly Florina has said that we have spent 25 years without an immigration policy. Since we know it is a main problem to our economy as well as to our security with increase of crime and terrorism, how would you suggest we screen immigrants? Correct overstay of visas? And what legislation do you propose in closing our borders?
That's a good question. At this point, we have 100,000, almost, 95 million people out of work. 95 million people out of work. That's a true number. 95 million people out of work. Do we need any more immigrants into this country? I propose to shut down our borders completely. Don't allow anybody else into this country. From 1920 to 1960s, there was no immigration into this country legally. The Democrats started to get wind that they weren't winning, so they wanted illegals to come in order to promote a Democrat voter drive for illegals. We need to shut down our borders for more than just the illegals. We also need to shut down our borders for terrorists coming in. If we have open borders, we don't know who's coming in, and we don't know how to screen them or how to track them. There's no tracking terrorists from Syria who don't have a history. There's no tracking the illegals because nobody wants to track them. The Republicans like illegal immigration because it supports businesses. It lowers our wages and puts Americans out of work. Democrats like it because it's more votes. How we take care of it is we don't make it comfortable for the illegal to be in this country. You know, the biggest thing is, I've talked to illegals before, and one of the biggest things they like to do, they come here and they like to take the money and they wire it back to their country, to their families. So they're taking the wealth of our country. Don't let them wire the money back. Make them keep it here and you will decrease immigration to this country. Don't allow them to have jobs. Don't let them do banking. It's very obvious and very easy. It's the same thing with voting. You just have to have an ID. With banking, you just put some simple procedures in place and you will stop the illegals from even coming here. The best opportunity for us in recent times, though it was bad, to stop illegal immigration is our economy going down the tubes. It stopped people from coming here. At least it stopped them for a while. Thank you.
Mr. Painter, I am assuming that you defend the Second Amendment rights to bear arms. Please elaborate.
Yeah, I'm definitely a strong supporter of the Second Amendment. If you go back to what the amendments were in the first place, the Constitution, you know, we look at now as hallowed and all that, but at the time it first was proposed, it didn't spell out our rights. It was very controversial. It may not have passed. That's when they had to hammer out the Bill of Rights to get the people to support it. The Founding Fathers didn't make the Second Amendment the right to keep and bear arms because they wanted to go hunting next Saturday. They knew that the American people wanted the right to say no. The British government or the government of Washington, you have the right to say no. The Second Amendment's not about a thief in the night. It's about an overzealous government that's overreaching, and you can put them back in place. That's my view of the Second Amendment.
Thank you. Okay, this question is for everyone, so you can all think and look at me and we'll go down the line. How many of you own a firearm of some sort, and how difficult was it to get a permit? Robin, do you have a firearm?
Yes, I do, and I became a lifetime member of the NRA when I was 10 years old, when I was in the Boy Scouts and used to shoot my BB gun. And then, of course, I was a sharpshooter in the Army. I know how to use a weapon safely, and I believe that if some of those folks in Paris, San Bernardino had had weapons, we wouldn't have had the death toll that we have. I'm strong Second Amendment supporter.
Frank?
Ruth, I'm smiling because I feel like I'm being outed here for the bad guys. There are none in this room, but this is going out live right now and it's going to be recorded on the internet, but that's okay. I'm going to answer it truthfully. When I was 24 years old, I asked my future wife if she would marry me. She said, yes, I've been waiting. I love you and I want to marry you, but under two conditions. Number one, you want to go, as you get your electrical engineering degree, you want to go back into the Air Force as an officer and make a career of it. I just graduated too, and I'm not going to move around the world every 2 or 3 years because of your career. Number two, I am firmly opposed to guns, and I will never allow one in the house for any reason whatsoever. And she was a firebrand on that, and I've been married this May in a couple of months for 31 years, happily married. So no, I do not own a firearm. However, I think this might be the most powerful statement I could possibly make. I am a rabid supporter of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and that includes the Second Amendment. Rabid. In fact, Dan Bongino, when he interviewed me to be his campaign chairman a few years ago, that was one of the very first questions he asked, and he said, great answer, this conversation can continue.
Thank you. Delegate vote.
I do own a firearm, and fortunately I didn't attempt to buy that firearm in Maryland. I was on active duty when that happened, because in Maryland it's very difficult to do. And in fact, I keep that firearm by my bedside, and it's ready, locked and loaded. Anybody ever wants to come take my firearms, my answer is you're not leaving outside of a body bag. That Constitution protects us. I carry it in my pocket everywhere I go, every day of the week, just like the boots on my feet. We have that right. I will always fight to support that right. Doing it in Annapolis now. We're going to do it on Capitol Hill by the beginning of next year.
Mr. Painter.
Yeah, I got a pair of 30-06s, a pair of 308s, a couple handguns, keep them all in safes. I bought them before you needed any kind of a background check in Maryland. Maryland does not require a permit. They do require a background check, but I bought them beforehand.
Thank you. Mr. Baker.
Yes, I own many guns, pistols, rifles, shotguns, muzzle loaders, bows. I'm the candidate that hunts, fishes, spends quality time in your community. Your guns have two enemies. One of them is rust, the other is politicians. So when you get down into Congress, you have a president down there, you have Hillary Clinton and many others. They want your guns. They know the only way they can get God out of your house is to get your gun. They get your gun, and then they're going to be coming after God. And then, of course, you know where our Constitution's going to be. Also, back to World War II, Japan never, ever thought about coming into our country because by far you can take every army, every military in the world, put them together, and it doesn't come close to the American citizenry. I will never, ever compromise my Second Amendment. Thank you.
Ms. Huber.
Yes, we own guns. We have 3 actually, and I'm a good shot. Anyone want to challenge me? And I am a strong Second Amendment supporter and will continue to be. These guns were bought before permits were required here in Maryland. We've had them for a very long time. But we wanted to find out about the process of acquiring a gun, and so we spent a few hours at Hendershots not too long ago learning what it takes today to buy a gun here in Maryland, and I was appalled by the complexity of it, and I think I would clearly support the Reciprocal Licensing Act that is now available up on Capitol Hill.
Thank you. Chris?
Well, Mr. Ficker said he was a sharpshooter. I believe that that's not a very good shot. I was a Marine, I was an expert shooter, so that's almost a perfect shot. So I don't know how Army goes by, but I was an expert in the Marines. Anywho, so I will shoot you between the eyes. But I own a Weatherby shotgun. It's a semi-automatic. It's a wonderful gun. I bought that. It didn't. I just bought that like a couple months ago. It didn't take me long to get it. I don't know why it would take that long, but it didn't. I bought it the day, and it took me about 30 minutes, and I had it, and I walked out the store. So it didn't take me very long. I bought my handgun too. It didn't take me very long. I had to go to the police barracks, sign some forms, and I got it. So I'm not sure what the delay is with Maryland or what people have experienced. But what I want to say is, I have guns. My guns aren't necessarily to protect me from people coming to my house. What good does it have to have guns if we don't bear them? The Second Amendment says we have the right to keep and bear arms. There's a reason for that. If we just have them in our house, it really doesn't do any good. How many people are going to have a home invasion? Not too many. I want to bear my arm, and I'll fight if I get to Congress and sue Maryland, to go to the Attorney General and sue Maryland to say that we have a right to bear our arms because it's a psychological deterrent against the government. County, state, and federal. So we need to bear our arms. Thank you.
Scott?
Can I respond to him? Yeah, we've got a couple Marines up here who think they're tough. They think that's the primary service of the U.S. Armed Forces. Well, I remember when my hand-to-hand combat instructor was a 6'6" Marine called Major Fear. And every day he would tell us, you have no one to fear but fear himself. Then we had some contests. And after that he said, you have no one to fear but fear himself, but butt kicker Ficker is quicker.
Thank you, Robin. Scott, do you have a gun?
I'm doctor, I have no gun, but I stand for protect the Second Amendment. Thank you.
Okay. Well, we don't want to get into a battle between the Marines and the Army, but I would like to make a comment.
Just a rebuttal. As my fellow Marine up here, I also was an expert, which no other force in the world matches what we do. But President Ronald Reagan, the greatest Republican president we all know and love, said one thing that men and women spend their entire lives trying to make a difference. Marines don't have that problem. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Okay, my last three questions are controversial. We've all had lots of letters to the editor. And in fact, if we can't handle them appropriately, I may call on Mr. Sheehan because I think he has some of them in his agenda too. Mr. Chen, in your opinion, how will fracking affect tourism in Garrett County?
Destroy it totally.
I would say, promote the international cooperation. American need to make a friend as many as possible. So if you have a lot of friends and the people, they come to USA to visit the USA tourist. This is my answer.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Ficker.
Yes, ma'am.
Our governor and General Assembly have approved, and the lift of the moratorium is in 2017, I believe, at this point, assuming that they lift the moratorium on fracking. What, in your opinion, is the first thing that will happen if they do lift the moratorium on fracking?
Well, I know Governor Hogan very well. I know his dad very well. And my son and I, in the last election, we ran in District 15, which Governor Hogan didn't win. My son and I visited 60,000 houses, and we handed out our literature and Governor Hogan's literature. And I support almost anything Governor Hogan stands for. When he looks down on the hill and sees me, he's going to think he's looking in a mirror, pretty much. I think that if we lift the moratorium on fracking, we're going to have a number of people in Garrett County making a good amount of money, because there is clean natural gas here, and it can be lifted without polluting the wonderful waters. I'm for protecting the Potomac River. It runs the length of the 6th District. If the congressman from 6th District doesn't protect the Potomac River, who in the United States will? But we can have fracking. We can have dry fracking. I've got friends who live in Pennsylvania. My son got a degree in petroleum and natural gas engineering from the University of West Virginia. Half the people in his classes were from the Middle East at the University of West Virginia. We can extract that natural gas, and we can have a lot of wealthy people in Garrett and Allegheny counties. And just remember, I'm the only one up here who actually works in Garrett and Allegheny County and have for more than 30 years.
Thank you. Frank, in your opinion, what health issues could happen almost immediately?
Regarding fracking,
Yeah.
I'm glad I got a chance to weigh in on fracking. I was on air 2 days ago and I was asked that very question, and I want to share my answer, and I'm addressing hopefully your question, Ruth. That issue, fracking, is the biggest eye-opener for me as a conservative Republican out of all of the issues. You know, you run for Congress, you stick your name out there, you're in the public eye, and all of a sudden you are expected to have an opinion on A through Z and everything in between, including F, fracking. And I, just having read about it from a distance, always thought, well, it's a good thing. Most of the political commentary out there is that it's a very good thing, lowers the price of natural gas and oil and you name it. However, since I've filed to run for Congress and coming out here, I have, as recently as February, gone out with supporters here who said, we want you to meet a bunch of people. And I've met with a whole bunch of people, including business people, Deep Creek, Lake, real estate, and I got an earful, mostly from Republicans, saying, this is not the greatest thing since sliced bread. There's dry fracking, but there's also chemical fracking, and there are problems with chemical fracking when it isn't done right, and there are dangers to the environment. So my concern is that there are health concerns when it's not done right. I haven't actually turned the wellhead on a fracking site, but I am very concerned about the clash between property rights on one hand and danger to the environment and not being able to sell property on the other. So I'm torn, and I'd like to think in Congress I would be open to both sides.
Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Tom, and he's going to talk about some Garrett County issues.